Hello, Coleman29 here with another Topic of the Week video. This one is over Mass Effect. Now, I did get a topic, the first topic, and so far it was at the time the only Mass Effect topic that I had when I planned it. And it was pretty big. It was submitted by an anon, and it was your honest opinions of the Mass Effect games. Now, I have a lot to talk about with Mass Effect, and I welcome plenty of more specific Mass Effect topics. But I decided to take this and narrow it down a little. So I decided to put this to talk about 5 specific things. And really, how these elements connect or don't connect across the games. I wanted to talk about story, tone, characters, gameplay, and choices. Since I think all 5 of those are important in distilling Mass Effect into what makes it good. Or in the later game's case, bad. Story. The story of Mass Effect 1 is great, and I actually consider this a fantastic game. I love Mass Effect 1. I love it all to death. It's some issues, of course, but it does a lot of good. Now, the story moving from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2 is an insane disconnect. I mean, the story of Mass Effect 1 definitely could have used a lot of expansion. Mass Effect 2 really could have built on a lot of stuff, but it chose instead to move your area of activity to a completely different part of the galaxy. And there is almost no retread over things from Mass Effect 1 at all. The only location that I think that is in any way repeated is the Presidium and the Citadel. And the Presidium in Mass Effect 2 is not the big area that you could explore in Mass Effect 1. It's Anderson's office. Or at least in my game. I guess it would be Udina's office if you chose him as your counselor for humanity. And that's it. You don't get to do anything, you go to explore. You get to go to Zakara Ward, where the dark and the criminals all hang out, where there's nothing good here, except a punch in the face from a criminal. And it's like, I'm going to talk about this more in the tone, but the story itself is more of a side story in Mass Effect 2. When you move from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2, it's like Mass Effect 1 is galaxy, and Mass Effect 2 is just like, yeah, the collectors, The collectors were never mentioned in Mass Effect 1. Sure, apparently they were mentioned in a book. But, I said this before, and I'll say it again. If your story requires that you need to go to outside materials to know anything that's going on, you have failed as a writer. I shouldn't have to read the Mass Effect books to know what's going on in the games. If you want to tell me stuff that happened in Anderson's past, okay, cool. If you want to expand stuff, that's cool. But don't try to shove the collectors into a book and then go, whoa, you see, they were there before. Look at the book. We talked about them in the book, not in Mass Effect 1. Because another problem with Mass Effect 2 is the fact that the collectors aren't just treated as a new threat. They're treated as if they've been here this whole time. And they just started doing crazy things now. It's like, okay. If there was a mention of the collectors in Mass Effect 1, on a side quest or something, I would have totally been okay with the collectors being referred to as known entities. But they weren't. And in fact, all things point in terms of the context of Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2 that the collectors didn't even come out of the old Omega 4 relay until the last 2 years. But the game tries so hard to sell you on this idea that they've been around all this time. They've been trading with the Batarians and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you can't just throw in elements like this. It's a disconnect. It makes the story less enjoyable. And I mean, I like the idea of the collectors. I like the idea that the Reapers took, especially Harbinger, took Protheans, huskified them, turned them into straight up cyborgs, and is using them as a personal, like, task force. Their own lackeys. It's disgusting, and it's entirely in character for the Reapers. But don't try to... They focus so much on the collectors that the Reapers are a side note in Mass Effect 2. That's wrong. This is something Smudboy has talked about in his Mass Effect 2 videos. Or, not just Mass Effect 2, but also Mass Effect 3. When you look at the stories of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, you have Mass Effect 1 here, you discover the threat of the Reapers. There are a bunch of side stories, but that is the core. You discover the threat of the Reapers. Mass Effect 2, the second part of the trilogy, should be focused on finding a way to fight the Reapers. And at this point, you should be fighting it against the odds that it's been so long, people don't believe you anymore. Outside of a few. Okay, that's interesting. You're fighting an uphill battle to try to find a way to stop the Reapers. Hell, the Clendagon weapon is even talked about. This is something that I thought was going to be some big plot point in Mass Effect 3. You know, the Clendagon, in Mass Effect 1, there's a planet called Clendagon, and it talks about how there's a giant, like, just a rift in the planet. It's huge. And they're like, it's not naturally forming. They thought it was 37 million years old, and they thought it was formed by a particle accelerator or something like that. Mass Effect 2, you find out that was fired at a Reaper. And it killed it! It killed a Reaper! This is the derelict Reaper in the IFF mission, which I haven't done yet. I'm waiting to do that until I get everything set up with all the characters. The Elusive Man even talks about finding the weapon. They found the weapon. They used the planet, and they calculated where the Reaper was. How no one found it is anyone's guess. But oh my gosh. Is this not something we could use to fight the Reapers? No, they never talk about it! In Mass Effect 3, they go into this random Deus Ex Machina with the Crucible, like, here, look what we found, it might do something, we're not sure it could possibly destroy the Reapers, but we're going to treat it like it's going to destroy the Reapers, even though we have no idea what it does. It's like, each game has this almost reset. Mass Effect 1 introduces us, Mass Effect 2 reintroduces us to Mass Effect, and Mass Effect 3 reintroduces us to Mass Effect. This story has no connections. And hell, when it comes to the characters, no, segue this into the characters. Some of the characters are so different and disconnected. Some of them are fine, but like stuff like Liara in Mass Effect 1 was a nice girl. She was a little naive. She was a little shy. She was really, really passionate about archaeology and mostly researching the Protheans. That was her entire point. That's the entire point of the plot. She's plot relevant. You need Liara. Because without her, you can't... she helps you with the Prothean cipher. Not the Prothean cipher. That's... the beacon. And later... Okay, yeah, later she melds you after the cipher, but... You know... And then Mass Effect 2, she goes from that to being a bloodthirsty, cruel, murderous information broker on Ilium, where she's thriving off of threatening people. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, did you guys even play Mass Effect 1? This is not Liara. And then Mass Effect 3, she goes back to being an archaeologist who happens to be the Shadow Broker. And it's like, okay, like... You could have made this work, but they dropped everything that made Liara even somewhat interesting in the first game in the second game. And another problem with Mass Effect 2 is the disconnect with the love interests. You see, you had 3 love interests in Mass Effect 1. You had Kaiden, Ashley, and Liara. The game, Mass Effect 2 goes out of its way to deny you ability to be with them. My male shepherd, romanced Ash, and very much loves Ash. One of the problems with the conversation on Horizon, and I'm sure this applies to Kaiden as well, in his version, if you romanced Kaiden as FemShep, is that you're not allowed to give them a decent explanation. You're not allowed to really discuss with them what is going on. I went through that whole stupid defend your position segment against the collectors on Horizon 3 or 4 times, just trying to figure out what the hell is the best outcome for this, because everything seems to be leading so hard towards negative, and it's ridiculous, because the game wants to deny you access to your previous love interest for the sole sake of forcing you to get with someone else. Here, like especially Male Shep, it throws Miranda at you, it throws Jack at you, it throws Tally at you, it throws Kelly at you, and it's sitting here, and I'm like, okay, you guys are great and all, but I love Ash, and I'm planning for my Shepherd to remain loyal to Ash, but the game never lets you talk to her outside of one scene in the entire game. This is a problem not just from a character perspective, but from a story perspective. You're not allowed to build things up from the first game onward. Okay, honestly, I would have liked this idea that if you play your cards wrong, you could have like completely pissed them off and they'll never join you. But it would have been great if there was some way that if you did the right things, you could convince Ash or Kaiden to join you. Hell, even as some sort of alliance watchdog for Cerberus, giving them access to a Cerberus vessel, like something, and allow us to interact with them more. I'm sure a lot of us, even if you didn't romance them, want to talk to them again, and driving things just straight up to nothing but hostilities with them completely destroys your ability to build things up, because then you get in Mass Effect 3 and then both Kaiden and Ash are completely screwed up. Ash especially. Oh, Ash, you did not deserve what happened to you in Mass Effect 3. Because that is stupid as hell, and then the romances are... don't even get me started in Mass Effect 3. Another disconnect, as these characters make no sense. And then in Mass Effect 3... the focus is on the Mass Effect 1 love interests. Ash, Kaiden, and Liara. Mostly Liara, because Liara is the creator's pet of BioWare. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, so you can barely interact with Miranda. Thane dies almost without... yeah, Thane dies no matter what. You can barely interact with Jack. Kelly Pop... you have to do like 5 things to keep Kelly from dying. Tally's on there. Tally and Garrus are the only love interests for Mass Effect 2 that actually have any focus in Mass Effect 3. And that's bad. Out of the dozen characters in Mass Effect and the numbers that you could romance, it's like BioWare couldn't make up its mind. Mass Effect 2, it's like, forget Mass Effect 1 love interests. Look at Mass Effect 2 love interests. Look how great they are. In Mass Effect 3, it's like, yeah, forget them. Come on, let's talk to the Vermeer Survivor and Liara. And it's like, I mean, there's no real connection between this that allows it to build up. The entire point of Mass Effect was that BioWare advertised that you could build things up from the first game, and every choice you make would have consequences and effects that would go through Mass Effect 2 and 3. It was built as a trilogy with choices from the very beginning. But they constantly deny you this. And yeah, okay, the choices, yeah. Your choices almost have no effect at all. I mean, they do have some effect, but a lot of it ends up being fairly superficial. Like, yeah, you know, if you killed Rex on Vermeer and Reeve took over and Eve dies, then yeah, you can pretty much convince Mordin to continue using the genophage, and like, but really, who wants that? It's so black and white. It's an either or scenario. It's almost like everything that was a major choice either ended up being railroaded into a single plot line, or was a black and white either or? Rex is here, good things happen. Reaver here, bad things happen. I mean, especially Mass Effect 2 really wants to play up the whole idea of shades of gray and everything, but it constantly has either leans towards black morality or just straight up gray, and you're not allowed to make good choices half the time. It's like your choices feel so odd. Like Mass Effect 1, there were a couple moments where I felt like my Shepard didn't say anything. He didn't say the things I wanted him to say. Like, I had good intentions behind something, but then he started, even picking the Paragon option, he started being a dick, and I'm like, what? Like, the infamous, hearing with Saren. No matter what you choose, Shepard is just screaming mad at the Council. And I can understand, but I'm a Paragon. I'm a super Paragon. I'm not going to sit here going, you've already made up your minds. You're against humanity. I'm like, I just want to say, oh, let us gather more evidence. Let me say that. And this happens in some games that allow you just, this will be an inevitability that the writers just either missed how some people would interpret things or how some people would want to react. Like in Deus Ex Human Revolution. There's one moment in that entire game, though, that sticks out to me as something happened that was really bad. And it was not what I intended. When you're trying to sneak into the police office, the police headquarters in Detroit, and you run into an old buddy of Jensen's, and you're trying to convince him to let you in. You find out that he's been using drugs after being down on his luck, and one of the things it says is like, bring up the drugs, and I'm like, man, I want to help this guy out. Like, man, we're old buddies. Here, let me help you with your drug problem. So I click bring up the drugs. And he's like, it'll be bad if your superiors find out that you're on drugs, wouldn't it? And he's like, don't turn me in. I'll turn you in if you don't let me in. I'm like, sitting here, I'm like, no, I don't want to blackmail him. And I get that feeling a lot in Mass Effect 2. Even picking the Paragon option sometimes feels like I'm being a renegade. Like, the game pushes you so hard towards Renegade that it feels like your choices don't even have any real matter. A lot of times, like, especially with the Garrus's loyal, like, a lot of times it'll throw a black and white issue, or not, maybe a black and white, but it'll throw an issue where a character, one of your squad mates, is doing something morally reprehensible, and you're not allowed to raise any legitimate, consistent objections to this. Thane's whole, well, I'm not really killing people. This is just my body. My soul doesn't kill people. I'm just sitting here. I called him out on that. I'm like, yeah, that's bullcrap. You're not taking responsibility for what you're doing. And then Samara runs around killing unarmed people on the sole sake of, yeah, they were bad, so my code allows me to kill them. Like, hell, there's one option. I'm pissed off this is even an option to say when you're talking to Thane, is when he talks about killing people, and you can say, it was your soul. It wasn't your soul. It was your body. Like, no, screw that. I like Thane, and I like Samara, and I like Garrus. But the way they're framed in Mass Effect 2 is basically like, agree with the Renegade, agree with the Renegade. I mean, I did Renegade responses to Garrus in Mass Effect 1 because it made a lot of sense. He was being red taped to hell by CSEC. They wouldn't let him investigate Saren. They canceled his investigation, and he left to join you to track down Saren. That makes a lot of sense. It's Renegade, but yeah, I agree with it. Hell, even killing Dr. Salian. It was like, I honestly did that. I honestly let Garrus kill him just because I wanted some Renegade points. I had so much. I completely filled up my Paragon bar. My Renegade bar was like, E. So I'm like, yeah, kill him. And then Garrus is like, you taught me to kill, Shepard. And I'm just like, in Mass Effect 2, I'm like, no? I brought you with me through 95% of the game. I tried to spare people at every opportunity. The only time I said kill someone was Dr. Salian, the guy who was killing people. He was harvesting organs. I'm sorry, it's disgusting. As a Paragon, I was disgusted. And the game forces you into being Renegade. And, like, you can talk to Samara. And I really wish that there was a way to talk to Samara and Thane and Garrus without it some way supporting them. Because Garrus, like when you're talking to Garrus, like especially Mass Effect 1, after you talk to Garrus after killing Dr. Salion, no matter what I chose, Shepard was basically like, remember the feeling of killing him. Remember that when you're fighting Saren. And I'm like, that's not what my Shepard would say. He was a bad man who did bad things and deserved a bad end. But that's not how you approach everything. I like the idea that Garrus went off the reservation without Shepard to hold him back. But you're not allowed to really hold him back. You can You can convince him that Sidonis is already living a hell as a dead. He's dead inside anyway. But then when you talk to him, I wanted to say your men would not want you to turn into this. They didn't want you to turn into a monster. But I'm never allowed to do that. You basically just, the Paragon stuff is basically just, and even just continuing the conversation with them after that, at the very end of the mission, is just basically like, hey, why don't we go get drinks? Kind of a thing. And it's like, you're just completely ignoring the entire moral debate. When you talk to Mordin about the genophage, you're not allowed to raise a legitimate criticism of the genophage modification. You basically just, the Paragon is basically just screaming, you're a mass murderer, Mordin! And it's like, okay. I don't want to, I'm not an idiot. Paragon Shep is an idiot half the time in Mass Effect 2, and a lot of times, I'm not even allowed to help people. Sure, you get stuff like the Batarian and Mordin's recruitment mission where you can give them some metagel, but that one guy in the Okira recruitment mission, when you find him injured, and his injuries aren't really severe, I wanted to give him some metagel, just because I always give people metagel when they're hurt. I'm Paragon. And you don't. You trick them into thinking that it's worse, and you get Paragon points. So I'm like, was that really a Paragon option? Tricking the guy into thinking his injuries are worse than they are and pumping him for information? That's not a Paragon action. It's a Renegade. But it's like, in Mass Effect 2, Paragon is Renegade, and Renegade is pure evil. And don't even get me started in Mass Effect 3, where this system just completely goes off the reservation, and it becomes pure good and pure evil most of the time. The entire point of the Paragon Renegade system was to avoid the whole light side, dark side thing of good and evil. Paragon is idealistic and Renegade is cynical. That was the point. And sometimes a Renegade approach is better than a Paragon approach, or a Paragon approach is better than a Renegade. It's not just press Paragon to win, which is what my game ended up being. In fact, there are times when I outright refuse to choose the Paragon option just because it's a press X to win type of scenario. At Tally's trial in her loyalty mission, when I got to the end, it was based, the Paragon option was, I don't need evidence. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, no, that's stupid. But then there was the neutral option was rally the crowd, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah. And I rally the crowd, and then Cal Rieger and Vitor go up, and they're like, if you're gonna exile Tally, you're gonna exile me. And you get the entire everyone on the ship just screaming for Tally, and it's like, that was funny and great, and it managed to completely avoid having to use evidence. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, I don't like how they paint the Super Paragon option blue and the Super Paragon option red. It's basically like, pick me. And then we have that to absurdities with the interrupts. And the interrupts is one of the worst implemented ideas in the entire series. Oh. Characters. Oh yeah, a lot of the I talked about characters. Tone is one of the worst inconsistencies going from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2 and 3. The tone of Mass Effect 1 is very much, it's optimistic towards, it's very Star Trek-y. It's not dark, it's not like super light and happy, but it's very much, this is the way the world is, kind of a thing. The world is gray, and we're not going to try to paint it. There are good things and there are bad things. Mass Effect 2 is basically like darker and grittier and edgier, and it's like, no, it's not the point. This is even billed as the dark second installation in the Mass Effect trilogy, and it's like, you miss the point of a trilogy. It's like, I understand the whole thing of things being a little bit darker, they've even, I think BioWare even called this the Empire Strikes Back, which it is nowhere near good enough to be compared to the Empire Strikes Back. But it misses the point, because the Empire Strikes Back wasn't needlessly dark. It had some dark moments, but it still maintained the feeling of Star Wars, which is what Mass Effect 2 did not do with its own series. Mass Effect 2 doesn't feel Mass Effect. It prevents you from going to the areas that are nice and shiny, and forces you into the darker, grimmier slums all of the time. I like going to places like Omega. I like going to places that have very little laws like Ilium. But if you don't let me go into the nice places of the Citadel, you're not showing me more of the franchise. You're not showing me more of this universe. You're showing me what you want me to see. You want to make this as dark as possible, and that is not what this is supposed to be about. And this tone, and this continues in Mass Effect 3, where the game gets even needlessly more depressing by forcing deaths on you. And the only way, the only way to avoid Morden's death is to kill Rex and Eve. What kind of restriction is that? You don't even give me an option to help people? Their deaths are an inevitability? No choice I make will spare them? Without doing something else that's even worse? It's stupid. It's stupid. The moments in Mass Effect 2 that I love are moments that directly relate to Mass Effect 1. Especially when you with the Quarians. Two moments that I really loved are helping two Quarians that are on their pilgrimage. Leah Vale, I think her name is. She's accused of stealing a credit chip from Evolus when she bumped into him at a store. And you can find out that no, this guy just left it at another store. And he just didn't have it on him when she ran into him. And you can clear her name. One of the things you talk about is that she was talking about trying to find a used chip. And one of the things that you can say, and this is exactly what I wanted to say, was basically, that's a great idea for your pilgrimage. Because obviously she's on her pilgrimage if she's outside of the flotilla. And she just, the look she gives to you is, you know what the pilgrimage is? Because so many people have no respect for the Quarians, and have no respect for the culture of the Quarians, so they see them as criminals and thieves, when they're honestly just trying to help their own people in their pilgrimage, and no one knows about the pilgrimage. And that look on her face, that joy, that someone understood why she was there, someone understood why she's doing what she's doing. I honestly wanted to give her money to help buy a ship. But you can solve this out, and I pulled my Spectre status to basically get the CSEC officer to shut the hell up on trying to arrest her. And I'm like, shut up, she's trying to do the best she can. And then another moment, you meet Ken on Omega, and you find out that he got trapped because he got swindled by an Elcor, and he's forced to sell at ridiculous prices. And then you can basically pay his way off of Omega. Like, here's 1,000 credits. Go get off here. Go get off this crappy rock. And you help him out. And I love those moments because because it's like Talia again from Mass Effect 1. You meet someone who's on their pilgrimage and you get to help them out. And they're small moments. They have almost no bearing on the plot themselves, but it makes me feel so good because it makes me feel like there's something being built up from Mass Effect 1. I mean, seeing the culture of the Quarians and the culture of the Krogan is nice. I mean, actually seeing the discrimination that the Quarians experience as described from the Mass Effect 1 codec is fantastic. It's a nice build-up that really connects the games. We don't get much about Krogan or Quarian culture, but we really get to see them when we do Grunt and Tally's loyalty missions. When you, even introducing all these new concepts, like the Krant. One thing I like about this is if you do the Patriarch quest, when you get it, you're introduced very early on to the concept of a Krant, which is a Krogan idea of you have people who are willing to fight for your honor because they respect and honor and care about you so much that they are willing to fight for you. Which is very Krogan thing. But then later on you get to become you get to somewhat pretend to be Patriarch's Krant and give him a little bit more respect from people. But then later on you become Grunt's Krant when he does his right. And that's great. These expansions are great because we only really knew about the Krogan through Rex, and he only talked about the Genophage mostly. And then the Krogan rebellions a little bit. Other than that, we didn't know much about Krogans as a culture. So seeing this build up is fantastic. And then, honestly, seeing stuff like Eve in Mass Effect 3 is great. And then curing the Genophage. And that's one, the Genophage and the whole Rannoch thing, the Tuchanka and Rannoch, those were great plot lines in Mass Effect 3. And I think from what I heard, those were written before Drew Karpyshyn left. So, of course, that they had a lot of relevance to what had been going on. You get to broker peace between the Geth and the Quarian. You get to cure the Genophage, even at the cost of Morden. And those are some great things, even if they weren't handled completely right, because there were still a lot of stupidity with the characters. But those choices you get to make to help these people really, really adds to the experience. The problem is that this should have been the entire experience of Mass Effect 2 and 3. I should feel like I'm constantly helping people through Mass Effect 2 and 3. I should feel like everything that's been built up for Mass Effect 1 goes into Mass Effect 2, which goes into Mass Effect 3. But in all honesty, you start off with all these choices in Mass Effect 1, whittled down in Mass Effect 2, and then you have one plotline in Mass Effect 3. And that's not what it should feel like. It shouldn't be getting more restrictive as things go on. It should be getting more expansive. As time go on, and when you reach Mass Effect 3, you don't have to worry about continuing it past that. You can do all these different variations, but they don't do that because they rushed Mass Effect 3 out the door. Now, onto the game. The gameplay is another disconnect, and this is the final topic on what I want to talk about. The gameplay in Mass Effect 1 is very much shooter with a lot of RPG elements. I loved it! It was different from all these other shooters I've played. Going into Mass Effect 2, it's basically like, strategy, RPG elements, gone! And yes, you can use some limited strategy, but it feels like too much like Gears of War. Someone who's played Gears of War, the fact that when I was first starting Mass Effect 2, and I was playing the game, I just sat there and I'm like, this is Gears of War. They were trying so hard to be Gears of War that they forgot what made Mass Effect 1 special. It was different. It was a real RPG shooter. It felt like an RPG. I had to use strategy. I felt true sense of victory over fights because I planned out each and every thing and not just, concussive shot. Yeah, disruptor ammo. Some of this stuff could have been used to build. The idea of being able to switch between ammos would have been fantastic if they included this in the weapon mod system, but they don't. They make this some sort of power into a soldier, and I'm a soldier. And I'm just like, these are good ideas. Why are you just replacing things? You got rid of the Mako because people complained. You got rid of the RPG elements because people had a few complaints. You got rid of the hammerhead when people complained, and Mass Effect 3 is so bland. It's just a typical shooter. And that's not how things should be. It shouldn't be... Mass Effect 2 has a few light RPG... it has a few light RPG elements. Mass Effect 3 gets rid of that entirely. It just cuts out what makes Mass Effect 1 interesting. Mass Effect 1 had some problems, don't get me wrong. Mass Effect 1's gameplay did have a few issues. It was a little clunky. It had a few animation issues. It wasn't fast. A lot of times things weren't fast enough, like weapon switching wasn't fast enough. It's sped up in Mass Effect 2, but at the cost of turning it into a generic shooter. And instead of fine-tuning Mass Effect 1's gameplay and gunplay and RPG elements, they cut them out. And that's such a terrible way to handle this. It disconnects and it's not fun. I don't have fun shooting in Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 1, I had a lot of fun playing this game. And I just feel like there was no real connect. In fact, I heard that Mass Effect 2 was straight up developed by a different set of people. So these people wanted to make a shooter, not Mass Effect. And that really shows. So if you want my honest opinions on the series, on each game, Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, Mass Effect 1 is the best of the bunch. It's the most interesting, it's the most dynamic, it offers you the most variation, it offers you real tough choices. In fact, the only tough choice I had in Mass Effect 2, not even a tough choice, but the only one I felt like was a real moral decision, was keeping or destroying Kasumi's gray box. I mean, yeah, it's the last bit she has of KG, but she's honestly just going to keep herself stuck in the past. And as a Paragon, I destroyed it. Though being Paragon, I did it for her. I wasn't going to force her to do it. And that's the one time I really felt there was a choice where Paragon and Renegade weren't inherently right or wrong. You could justify any of them. And I felt like there was a lot of stuff in Mass Effect 1 like that. One of the things that you did in Mass Effect 1 was help these two people out, this woman and her brother-in-law, and she's pregnant with her late husband's baby. And, you can convince her you can basically force her to get an in utero treatment for a heart condition that her late husband had. Or you can tell the guy to calm down. And you meet them in Mass Effect 2, and you know what? I was excited. I remember you guys. Come on, hey, remember being Commander Shepard? I helped you 2 years ago. And you know what? You can't talk to them. You can't talk to them. You just walk by them and they cycle through a few things, like any other generic NPC. And so much of your choices in Mass Effect 1 are like that. You just get some galactic news that means absolutely nothing. You get an email, which means absolutely nothing. Hey, remember Corporal Toombs? All you get is an angry email, and that's it. There's nothing else to. You don't meet him. You don't hear him yell at you. You can't even bring up freaking Admiral Kahoku to the Elusive Man. He's mentioned in a galactic news feed, but you can't bring him up. I want to know what the hell was going on with Cerberus. I mean, I accept the whole idea that these were rogue cells. I like that. I like this whole thing that we didn't see the real Cerberus every time in Mass Effect 1, outside of the Exogeny and the Thor. Nah, just little camera problems. Well, you can't build up anything. You can't a lot of the stuff you did in Mass Effect 1 doesn't matter at all in Mass Effect 2. And that's so disappointing. That's one of the biggest disappointments I have with Mass Effect 2, is that it really feels like nothing you really did in Mass Effect 1 matters. This is so different. It feels like an AU. It feels like this is fanfic. And that's not how I should be feeling when I play this game. A sequel to a game that I really love. Mass Effect 2 has some good moments. It has good characters. But overall, it's a disappointment. It's not Mass Effect. It's something else. It's more generic. It doesn't mean anything. And in Mass Effect 3, it just gets even worse. Mass Effect 3 is crap outside of a few good moments. It doesn't even really give you any great new characters. You get James. And you get some dumb romances. The only romance that was halfway decent was Liara, because Liara's BioWare's creator's pet. So yeah, those are my honest thoughts on Mass Effect, even though I would love to get more individual topics about Mass Effect so I can talk more about those. But for now, I'm going to leave it at that. Mass Effect 1, fantastic. Mass Effect 2, disappointing and poorly written. Mass Effect 3, so, this is an almost 40-minute video. This is definitely my longest video, I guess, since I covered a lot in this. I'm glad I did this in under an hour. So if you want to submit a topic to me, just go to my blog on coolman229.tumblr.com. Send me an ask. Just make sure to put topic, colon, and then your topic, so I don't just answer the ask. if you're watching this on YouTube, just put the topic below and ask me a question of something specific. Just make sure to follow the rules that I've laid out, and I will post a link to that below. So, thank you for watching.